to stand.
I know you're good. If you will, try to raise your right hand as you press in.
I'm going to rub the podium down. Would you state your name for the record, please?
Erika Castro-Miles.
I hope you'll bear with me as I might have to step away and cough. Would you spell your name for me?
ErikaAnnecastromiles.
And that last name, Castro-Miles, is that hyphenated?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask you questions today about bond factors, specifically character, reputation, likelihood of appearing in court. I'm not going to ask any questions about the substance of the allegations. Are we clear on that?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll try to ask very brief questions so that it doesn't take too long.
Miles, if you move that chair a little closer to that. Thank you.
Before you became incarcerated incident to these allegations, where did you live?
I lived at 1017 Singleton Road.
Is that here in Dixon County,
Yes,
Tennessee? And the Dixon proper or outside of Dixon proper?
In Dixon.
Okay. How long had you been in Dixon County?
About 2 years.
Before Dixon County, and I want to go way back, where did you grow up? Where were you actually born and raised?
I was born in La Mesa, California.
And that La Mesa, California is outside of?
It's in San Diego County.
Okay, near San Diego.
Yeah.
Okay, so San Diego County, California. Did you have any siblings growing up?
I have 3 older half-sisters.
3 older half-sisters. Are they still with us?
One is, yes.
And so 2 have passed.
Yes.
And I apologize for having to ask some of the delicate situation questions, but of course we need to cover some of these bases. When you were growing up in La Mesa, California, did you grow up around animals?
Yes, I did.
Specifically, what kind of animals did you grow up around?
When we lived in the city, which was La Mesa, we had a Rottweiler, Doberman Pinscher, a couple rabbits, a couple birds, 4 or 5 cats.
And those were pets, rescue animals? What are we talking?
They were all rescue animals.
Okay. Beginning from when you had grown up with these animals through ultimately even April, May of this year, had you been continuously around animals?
Always.
Okay. Had you been continuously around your family members, whether your siblings or your children?
My children.
Never lived alone?
No.
Okay. Now, were you raised religious by any chance?
I was to First Communion and baptized when I was 13 years old in OLPH. It was a Catholic church.
And you studied through catechism and things of that nature?
Yep.
Okay. Are you still religious, Catholic background, so continuously?
I do Christian religion.
So you've converted to Protestantism from Catholicism?
I was excommunicated from the Catholic Church.
Okay. So you've converted to
Yeah.
Protestantism. Now, what brought you ultimately to Dixon County? I'm fast forwarding, we're going to come back, but what brought you here to Dixon County?
This last time, my youngest daughter ran away and was gone for over 72 hours, and the court system wanted me to move and try find somewhere else where I can live with just my 2 children. So I moved back to Dixon.
So were you attempting to find stability?
Yes.
And that stability would have been necessary to get your youngest daughter back into your custody?
Yes.
Now that youngest daughter, that's not Braden, who testified moments ago. That's Veronica, is that right?
Yes.
So at the time, she would have been 15, 16, is that right?
Yeah.
And so you've been in Dixon County for how many years this most recent time?
About 2.5 years.
About 2.5 years now, and married to?
Jonathan Miles.
Still married to him.
Yes.
Are you, I guess by its nature, you're in handcuffs. Y'all are physically separated. Are you separated
No.
in the common term of separation?
No.
Okay, you're still together.
Yes.
Anticipating divorce at any point in time?
No.
Is he standing by you?
100%.
Okay, and you were sitting here as he testified a little while ago and said some of the same things.
Mm-hmm.
Are you testifying independently of that? You're telling the truth, right?
I'm telling the truth.
Okay. Does he truly call you 2-3 times a week?
I call him 3 times a week. I'm constantly writing.
Did you see the necklace that he had on?
He's got my wedding rings.
That was what?
My wedding rings.
It was your wedding rings. Because you can't have those with you where you're at right now. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at some point, you and Mr. Miles were separated, as in physically separated. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, you heard him say, I'm sure, that that was in April of this year. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So in April of this year, he moves to Russellville, Kentucky. Now, when we talk about Russellville, Kentucky, that's what, an hour and a half away or something?
Hour and 20 minutes away.
Hour and 20 minutes from probably where we're sitting right now.
Yes.
Now, there was some testimony from Braden that you're going to live with her in Clarksville. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if you make bond, you're going to move to Clarksville.
Yes.
And how far is that from Russellville, Kentucky?
30-minute drive.
Okay, so still close to the ties that you have with your husband.
Yes.
Okay, are you going to cross state lines, or is he coming here?
He'll come and see me.
Okay, do you have any intention or any anticipation of crossing state lines?
No.
Okay, and we'll get into a little bit more of that, but talk about the separation between you and Mr. Miles back in April. Had you been separated from him any time before then, during the 8 years of your relationship?
Only one other time when I was living up here in Dixon and he was living in Green Hills.
And that was a brief physical
Yeah,
separation.
just a brief.
Okay. Now, let's talk about your employment history for a minute. Before you became incarcerated, where were you employed?
I was working at Dunkin' Donuts on 46.
And you had more than one job?
I've had more than one job in the last few years, yes.
Okay. And what were your other jobs?
I worked at Payway. It's a branch off of P.F. Chang's in Brentwood. I worked at Einstein's Brothers Bagels in Franklin, Tennessee.
These are restaurants?
Yes.
Okay.
Dunkin' Donuts. I worked at Cookout. Arby's in King City Springs. I worked for Arby's off and on for 20 years.
Okay. Was there ever a time in the last, say, 20 years that you were unemployed for a long period of time?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
Was when I was married to Daniel Prack. We were together 10 years. I was a stay-at-home mom the whole entire time we were married. That went on. I had a couple jobs after our divorce, and then when me and Jonathan got together, the deal was I take care of the house and take care of the kids. He worked to pay the bills.
But in the last, say, 6 or 8 years, you've maintained solid employment since you've been with Mr. Miles.
Yes.
So for part of that time, stay-at-home mom, but for most of that time, employed.
Yes.
No, you're not selling drugs or doing things illegal to make money. Is that correct?
Correct.
You're a taxpayer?
Yes.
Okay. You filed your tax at the end of every year?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you heard that there was some driving on a suspended license talk. You don't presently have a license, is that
No.
right? Anytime that you would go to work, somebody's taking you to work, I would assume?
Yes.
And you heard, I would assume, Braden testifying that she would be taking you to court. She would take you to work, for instance. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. When you were living in Dixon County before your incarceration, you had a vehicle.
Yes.
Okay, and that was shared amongst the family members?
No, that was my car.
It was your car.
Yes.
But still, Braden would drive it from time to time?
Every once in a while, yes.
Okay. Okay. Now, have you ever filed, this sounds dumb, but have you ever filed bankruptcy or been foreclosed on?
No.
Never had any seriously detrimental financial condition?
No.
Okay. Have you always been able to pay your bills?
Yes.
So your rent, for instance, with that camper or trailer that you had lived in, you paid that rent?
Yes.
Never, when you lost that camper, and I don't want to dig too deep into the how or why, but when you had to leave that camper, it wasn't because of a financial condition?
No.
Okay. Thank you. So you've never been evicted necessarily?
No.
Okay. Is there anything that would keep you from being able to go back into the workforce upon your release?
No.
Anything physically, I mean?
No.
Okay. Now, notwithstanding the stigma of the charges, but you're capable of standing on your feet at Arby's for 8 hours, 10 hours a day. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. If you do get out on bond, do you anticipate being able to go back and obtain gainful employment?
Yes.
Pay your taxes?
Yes.
Become a good citizen in society again?
Yes.
Okay. Now, before this first-degree murder charge, you had never faced anything like this. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay. Now, let's talk about your family for a moment. Married to Jonathan Miles, we had established. He lives in Russellville, just up the road. And you've got 3 children.
Yes.
What are their names again?
Tiffany, Braydon, and Veronica.
Now, we've heard from Braden. Tiffany is how old now?
She's 21.
And Veronica is how old now?
18.
18. So she is an adult. And have they all graduated high school?
Yes, they have.
Now, being your children that you raised, they all graduated high school.
Veronica actually graduated a year early.
Veronica did. Okay. Now, Veronica, at the last of her minority, 17 and then turning 18, hadn't been in your care. Is that right?
Exactly.
So you had attempted to get her back, but you didn't actually successfully get her back into your home. Is that right? Okay, now does that have anything to do with your living situation or
No.
financial situation?
No.
It wasn't that she wasn't returned to you because of drugs or alcohol abuse or anything like that?
No, my rights were never taken from me. She was actually in state custody because she was considered an out-of-control teen.
So this is more along the juvenile justice situation, right?
Yes.
So she was in trouble, and that's why she was out of your home,
Exactly.
not because of you.
No.
Okay. Now, moving on from that, besides your family, your children, your family, are your parents still with us?
My mother is
And where does your mother live?
San Diego, California,
Okay. Do you still keep in touch with her periodically?
all the time.
Okay. What about your father? He's passed away.
Yeah.
He passed away in 2011. You got to spend time with him before he passed away.
About 2 months.
Okay. He got to see you sober before he passed.
Yes.
There was a period of time in your life when you were not sober.
Mm-hmm.
You were with Daniel Pratt,
Yes.
okay, and there was a period of time when he was running meth or doing meth.
Yes.
Is that right? And you kind of got caught up in that. Is that right?
Yeah.
In the mid-2000s.
2003.
Okay. And in 2007, ultimately, you were with him when he got charged crossing the border in some way, Arizona. Is that right?
Yep.
That's the time you got picked up with a pipe in your purse.
I didn't actually get picked up. I got cited.
It was a citation, wasn't it?
Yes.
Misdemeanor.
Yep.
What we call here in Tennessee unlawful drug paraphernalia. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But in talking about that family, you've got good relationships with everyone in your family?
Yes.
Good relationships with friends outside of your family? You heard Darlene Rep testify a few minutes ago. You heard her talk about your character, for instance. I need you to speak audibly because we're typing this.
Yeah.
You heard her say things like and I don't want to misspeak, but I think she was trying to lay the foundation that you're compassionate with your family, friends, animals.
My family's everything to me.
Everything she said, you carry that opinion as well of
Yes.
yourself. Okay. Besides these allegations that you had something to do with this shooting, before that, had a solid relationship with all these people that we're talking about?
Yes.
Could anybody have come to court and said, she's dangerous, she's assaultive, she's a bad person, I'm scared of her, before this incident?
No.
Okay. I want to get a picture of of your relationships with some of the men in your life. And I want to dig a little deep just to show where we've come from and where we are now. You had a child when you were young. Is that right?
Yes.
How old were you?
I was 17.
Did you have to drop out of high school?
I tried to finish. I just wasn't focused enough after she was born.
Okay. What was the man's name that you first got involved with?
Richard McMillan.
Did you call him Rick?
Yes.
Okay. He treats you well?
No.
Okay. You later met someone else.
Jeremy McNeese?
First husband?
Yes.
Did he treat you well?
Until he got that marriage license.
Okay. Got married after that.
Yes.
A guy named Rusty Thill. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Rusty is
Veronica's father.
Veronica's father.
Jeremy is Braden's father.
Okay. Did Rusty treat you well?
He did for
Okay.
a while.
Third husband, Daniel Pratt.
Yes.
Okay. He's the one that got picked up when he was driving that U-Haul over the border.
Yes.
Got charged in Arizona. Is that right?
Yes.
That's the 2007 episode when Braden was 7 or 8 years
That
old.
is exactly June 7th, 2007, roughly around 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
That's a good memory. I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday.
I
You know
remember
that
the-
date.
I remember the dates that really burn in your brain.
Okay. Now the state in a few minutes is going to hammer you about not remembering that you had to go to court. But you remember the date. You didn't go to...
I didn't go to court because I called them and spoke with them, and because I didn't have financial stability or any finances to get back to Yuma. I was already in Russellville. They were going to push it off and send me a letter. They never did.
Okay. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. But Daniel Pratt, he was the one who first brought drugs into your life. Is that correct? So the first time that you had ever used drugs was early 2000s.
Yes.
Okay. And for a period of time, you used drugs with Daniel Pratt. Is that right?
Yes.
What was your drug of choice?
Methamphetamines.
You stopped using drugs at some point. Is that correct?
June 7th, 2007, I flushed everything down the toilet and I moved.
So that's when you were
I
in
cooked cold turkey. I drove 2.5 days, 32.5 hours with 3 kids in the front seat cab of a U-Haul going through withdrawals.
So this episode that the state is saying evidence is a failure to appear or a history of failure to appear, that episode, the date for which is burned into your memory, that's when you stopped using drugs?
Yes, it was my sister Tiffany's birthday.
And is that why you remember that specific date?
Yes, because my sister Tiffany is the one that was killed in 96.
So I want to picture that moment 11 years ago. Daniel Pratt in the U-Haul with you, was he taken away?
Yes, he was.
In handcuffs?
Yes.
Drug charges?
Yes.
And you made a decision on that day to do what?
I made a decision that day that I was not going to use anymore.
And did you continuously maintain that position?
I sure did.
After June 7, 2007, when was the first time that you ever used again?
Oh. Mid-April 2018.
This year?
Yes.
That's what we call a relapse. Okay. Daniel Pratt, for a moment. Did he put his hands on you?
Yes.
Since Daniel, you've married again.
Yes.
Jonathan Miles.
Yes.
Married him sometime... Well, let me back up. You got together with Jonathan Miles in what,
May 21st, 2012.
2012. Been with him ever since?
Yep.
Going on 7 or 8 years or whatever that math is. Okay. Has he been good to you?
We have our problems, but everybody does.
Has he ever put his hands on you?
He has before.
Okay, but you're sticking with him?
Yeah, because he's not the only one guilty in it.
Okay.
He and him have slept each other.
Okay. Now, when he... Pardon. When he left to be separated for this period of time while he takes a job at Camper World, that was in April of this year. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. Now, I want to talk about you for a moment. How would you describe your reputation before these allegations transpired?
I was considered the neighborhood mom.
What does that mean when you say that?
All the kids came to my house. All of them.
What kids?
My daughter's friends. I'd go to pick them up from school, and I had a big Durango, and I'd look in the back seat, and all the kids.
What did they call you?
Mom.
Even kids that were not yours
Yeah.
would call you mom. What about if we're talking your reputation as the neighborhood mom, the motherly type? You heard Braden say that you're a perfect mom. What about character traits, integrity, honesty, compassion? How would you describe yourself before and notwithstanding this incident?
I'd give you the shirt off my back. If you need my car and you can't afford it, I could always get another car. I'd sign it over to you. You need the last $5 I have, it's yours. There's stray dogs on the side of the road, they need to be fed. I'll go spend the last $2 I got on a bag of dry food just to feed them.
So let's talk about animals for a minute. If you're like me, I like animals more than I like people. You've been around animals your whole life.
My whole life. My
Okay.
parents and I used to run a horse rescue center. Well, not really run it. We would just walk down to the end of our gate and find people tying their abandoned or abused animals tied up to our gate, and we'd take them and find new homes for them.
Okay. I hate to break it, but can you scoot up just a little bit just to make sure that we're where we need to be? So you were a rescuer of animals?
Always.
Now, I think of dogs being rescued, but you're talking about other animals?
Horses, goats, pigs,
So
anything.
were you raised, and I may have asked you this a minute ago, you were raised around horses.
Yes.
Some of us, we couldn't afford horses growing up, but you had them around you all around.
Well, my parents couldn't afford it either, but it was something I wanted to do. I was a barrel racer.
Okay. And even in your time in Dixon County, what was your relationship with the animals then?
Oh, Van Leer is very well known for stray animals. Me and Darlene would just pick them up.
You and Darlene Rep, the one who testified earlier. So you would rescue dogs?
Yep.
You ever volunteered at any sort of rescue shelter or anything?
I used to volunteer at the Lincoln County Animal Shelter in Russellville, Kentucky. I used to volunteer at the Poway Large Animal Rescue Center in Southern California. I was part of the Animal Rescue Fire Team in Southern California. I used to work with 4-H, rescuing rabbits, abused animals. I volunteer just about anywhere and everywhere.
In the event that you get a bond that you can make, because the judge is going to set a bond, but presuming you can make that bond when you get out, what do you anticipate doing with that compassion?
With that, well, I always wanted to be a veterinarian. If I could just get my GED, I'd probably finish school and get my veterinarian license.
Now,
I volunteer at animal shelters. Animals are very good therapy, especially for people who are recovering addicts.
are you working towards getting your GED right now?
I can't work towards anything or do any programs in the prison until my status changes.
Okay, but are you putting wheels in motion to change that status?
I've already signed up for every single program you could probably think of in there.
Okay, so you've got wheels in motion to get your GED is really what I'm trying to ask?
Yes.
Okay. Now, before this episode, had you ever been accused of anything like this?
No.
Had you ever been accused of any assaultive behavior, any domestic assaults or anything of that nature?
No.
Okay. Excuse me. Your mental condition before this episode. Any history of anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, instability?
Anxiety and depression.
Okay. No, nothing that ties to assaultive behavior, multiple personality, or anything like that.
No, I was diagnosed with PTSD.
Were you diagnosed PTSD after this?
No.
Okay. Are you being treated for anxiety, PTSD, or anything of that nature now?
Yes, I am.
Okay. If you got out on bond, would you continue whatever that therapy treatment is required of you?
Yes.
Substance abuse is obviously incident to this in the early and mid-2000s, and then for about a month of this year. Are you engaging in any substance abuse treatment?
I'm doing NA through bookwork right
If,
now.
if and when the judge sets a bond that you can make and you get out, are you going to continue substance abuse treatment?
Yes, I am.
Where will you live if and when you get out?
With my daughter Braden in Clarksville, Tennessee.
Is she drug-free?
Yes, she is.
Has she always been drug-free?
Yes, she has.
How long have you, but for April and May, that month, been drug-free?
11 and a half, 12 years.
Other than traffic tickets, I want to talk about a criminal record. Do you have any criminal record other than a speeding ticket from time to time growing up?
No, I don't.
Okay, now you got picked up for what some would call a traffic ticket, or driving on a suspended license in 2014. Is that right?
Yes.
Now that citation is for driving without your license because it was suspended. Is that right?
Yes. I was originally pulled over for a fix-it ticket of a headlight.
And that was in Kentucky.
No, this one was in Springfield, Tennessee.
The driving on suspended was in Springfield.
The headlight was in, they both were in, one was in Springfield, one was in Russellville.
Okay, so the reason your license was suspended was
Because of Russellville.
the headlight ticket that you didn't pay.
Yes.
Okay, so your license was suspended not because of a DUI, which we would typically call revoked license, but it was suspended for some unpaid headlight ticket in
Yes.
Kentucky. Okay, now you're driving without a license because it's suspended out of Kentucky. You're in Springfield. You get pulled over then for what?
Driving on suspended. There was a routine, it was 4th of July, they were doing checkpoints.
Just a traffic stop.
Yes.
Okay. And so they run your license. They determine you were driving on a suspended license. Did you know at that moment your license was suspended?
No, I did not know because I actually had a certificate from Kentucky that was mailed to me for completing my traffic school. It takes 24 hours for them to reinstate your license. It hadn't been 24 hours yet.
Okay. So then you get picked up on this driving on a suspended. A court date gets set, and you miss that court date in 2014. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now that's the episode Jonathan's talking about that y'all had moved to Missouri.
Yes, and that ticket, I actually still have it in storage. It was dated for a Saturday afternoon for me to go to court. There is no such court that's open on Saturday. I tried to have my court date changed, and nobody would cooperate with me. I was getting ready, we were getting ready to move. We had nowhere to go. We were going to go live with a friend of mine up in Missouri. and he had a job opportunity up there as well.
So, irrespective of the who, what, when, and why, somehow or another, court dates and so forth got missed.
Yes.
So you got a failure to appear.
Yes.
Now, did you eventually go back to Springfield and take care of that?
I actually was in Van Leer when I got picked up, and Springfield came and got me. I spent 3.5 days in jail. My daughter bailed me out, and I went to court, and I was put on probation for 11/29.
Okay, so after your daughter bailed you out, you had another court date.
Yes.
Did you go?
Yes, I did.
You didn't get a failure to appear for missing that one.
No.
You went to court, and then you did what? Swore to tell the truth? Said, I'm guilty?
Yes.
Got on probation for 11 months, 29 days.
Yep.
You did probation.
I did probation, paid probation fees.
Paid
did
all
drug
your fines?
testings, everything.
Paid all your fines, fees, and costs.
Yes.
You eventually got off probation.
Yes.
Okay, now that's the 2014 incident. The 2007 incident, that was an unlawful drug paraphernalia citation.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was a drug paraphernalia because I know that I didn't have any drug paraphernalia on me. My ex-husband that had it on him.
Okay, but you got charged with it.
Yes.
And it was probably in some sort of purse or some sort of bag. Is that right?
Probably.
Okay, but y'all were moving.
Yes.
You had all of your belongings in a U-Haul truck.
Yes.
So you didn't have it in your pocket.
No.
Wasn't in your breast pocket.
No.
Wasn't in the purse that you have on you.
No.
Right? So when someone says, oh, she had a pipe in her purse, most people are thinking, like Miss Bates, she brought a bag. It's with her. It is on her person. Is that how you would describe having that pipe?
If it was on my person, then yeah, I can see where they got it was on my person, but I didn't have anything on me.
But that's not where it was, is
No.
it? It was in one of your other bags and belongings.
More than likely.
Okay. Now, you missed a court date for that. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's to try to speed this up, I'll lead you a little bit. You had a citation, had a court date set, you just didn't go back.
I didn't go back because I couldn't afford it. I talked to them over the phone. They were going to push it back.
It's 2,000 miles away, right?
Over.
And it's not a felony, this is a misdemeanor, right?
Yes, I'm not sure.
Not extraditable that you know of?
No.
Okay. Now,
I mean, if it was extraditable, they would have extradited me when they extradited him.
this is 11 years ago. Okay. Now, since then, you have been to court for a number of reasons, for one reason or another, and you've not missed any court dates other than those instances. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. In the event, when this judge sets a bond, if you can make that bond and you get out, is there any reason to think that you will miss court dates for a first-degree Class A felony?
No.
And you're going to live where?
I'll be 30 minutes away. There would be no excuse for me to miss.
Okay. You're not going to skip jurisdiction, abscond, or anything of that
No.
nature? Okay. You got any idea where you'll work?
Whoever will hire me at the point.
You're going to try to get a
I'm
job?
gonna try to get a job, yes.
Okay. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do?
I put my hair up.
Your hair's down right now.
Yes.
Why?
Because one of the counselors in the prison has been keeping track of the case and told me that it would be a good idea for me to wear my hair down so everybody can get a visual of how long and thick my hair actually is.
Got super long hair, super thick hair.
Yes.
Is it otherwise typically up?
All the time.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Crouch?
May I grab a tissue? I meant to bring some of my own, and I apologize.
And some Germex, and wipe that podium off too. Ms. Castro-Miles, which neighborhood would you consider yourself to be the mom of the neighborhood?
Well, just about everywhere.
There's a lot of them, isn't there?
Well,
How many neighborhoods have you lived in?
starting when?
You tell me. Let's go back. There's been a bunch.
How far back do you want to go?
2007.
2007. Well, I lived in El Cajon, California, Lakeside, California.
Okay, how long?
El Cajon. I'd have to say about maybe 3-4 years.
Okay.
Lakeside. About maybe 3 years.
Okay.
And then I moved to
So that puts us to 2013. That's 6 years.
I mean, we moved to Russellville, Kentucky in 2007. I really don't really know how long we were in California. I grew up in California, so I lived all over.
You have lived all over. That's fair to say, correct? Actually, you just said that.
Pretty much, yeah.
Have you lived all over?
Not all over. I can name the states that I've lived in.
Have you lived in a lot of places?
A lot of towns, yes.
Yeah. A lot of neighborhoods?
Yes.
And your testimony today, what you want this court to believe is that you're the neighborhood mom in all these places?
You can talk to a lot of kids and they'll tell you the same thing.
Okay. Well, is that, I'm just asking you, are you the neighborhood mom in all these places?
I used to be, yes.
All right. Would you still, if you were released today and went back to a neighborhood, would you become the neighborhood mom?
Whatever friends my daughter would bring home, they all call me mom.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you familiar with the quote, "I can be your most beautiful dream or your worst fucking nightmare. I'll leave it all to you"?
No.
You're not? That's on your Facebook page.
Objection, Foundation.
Is that?
He's asking her whether or not she's familiar with it, and she's denied it, and he's...
I haven't seen my Facebook in 7 months, so I have no idea what's on
Let me
there.
give you a picture of it. You recognize that from your Facebook page?
No, I don't.
You don't? So, if I subpoena Facebook records and bring them in here, is it going to be your testimony at the next hearing that that's
if it's
fabricated?
on my Facebook page, then maybe you need to do that because I don't know who has control over my Facebook page anymore.
Okay. What about this one? You recognize that from your Facebook page? What is that?
It's just a picture.
Well, what's the picture of?
It's a picture of a nun.
And what's the nun doing?
So you're going to go
What?
around telling people that they can't have
I'm
pictures on
asking
their Facebook?
you, what is the nun doing in that photo?
She's got a gun in her hand.
And what's the
Does
quote?
that mean I'm going to go get one?
and
No,
what's
it doesn't.
and what is the quote?
Don't fuck with me. I fuck back.
And that's what you do, isn't it?
No, it's not.
But both of those are on your Facebook page, right? Yes or no?
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay, fine. Now, let me ask you this. Would a neighborhood mom be presenting this type of quote and statement to the children that come and visit?
Do you know how old my children are? I haven't started doing things like that until they were
That's
old
not
enough
the
to
question I
understand.
ask you. I'm asking you, would a neighborhood mom that you're trying to characterize yourself to be broadcasting this type of message? Yes or no? Your Honor, I'm going to ask the court to instruct the defendant to answer the question. Yes or no?
Castro-Miles, you have to answer one way or the other, yes or no?
I don't know.
Let the record reflect that the defendant is being evasive in her answer, Your Honor.
All right.
One of the reasons that you don't have a criminal conviction is because you avoided a court date. Yes or no?
I didn't avoid no court date.
You didn't?
No.
Why is there a warrant for your arrest out of the state of Arizona? For failure to appear.
Yeah,
If you did
failed
not-
to appear because I had no finances, and if
Okay.
you were listening, you would have heard that I did call the courthouse that day.
I think we're
and
starting to
days
see
before.
I think we're starting to see the real you, aren't we, Ms.
No,
Castro-Miles?
you're
No?
You don't know who I am.
Well, tell me why there is a failure to appear warrant for your arrest out of Arizona.
One more time. I called the court system
Mm-hmm.
and told them that I didn't have the financial funds to get back. They were to send me a letter with a new court date. They failed to do so.
You got a lot of excuses for the reasons that you don't honor the instructions of the court, don't you?
No, I don't.
Well, what's the excuse for Robertson County?
My court date was dated on the ticket for a Saturday. I called to have my court date changed, and I was moving.
As I
Excuse
just
me?
said, you have lots of excuses for your failures to
Excuse me for
appear.
wanting to make sure that my children had a roof over their head and that my husband had a job opportunity. Next time I will remember that we need to camp out at the courthouse.
Miss Miles, you were cited for possession of methamphetamine in a pipe in the back of a U-Haul truck with your children present. Don't
In the
get
back
into
of a
all this about
U-Haul.
how much you
In the
care
back
about your
of a
kids.
U-Haul, and it was
One
not
of
on
you
my
at a time
person.
need to talk. You wait till he's finished with the question, then he will give you a chance to answer before he begins his next question.
Is this a copy of an arrest
I have
warrant?
no idea because I never have been issued a warrant from the Human
This
Arizona.
states exhibit number 2. This is a
Objection,
certified-
lack of
This is
foundation.
a certified copy of an arrest warrant from the state of Arizona.
It's a certified
I
copy.
was never
You be
coached
quiet
with a
until
warrant or
You be
anything.
quiet when there's an objection, and I'm ruling on it. You sit there quiet. This is a certified copy.
Yes, sir.
Judge, there should also be a self-attesting affidavit. Doesn't necessarily merely need to be a certified copy. A certified copy can come through the appropriate witness-laying foundation. There is not such. If it's a self-attesting affidavit, then it can come in absent foundation.
No, I'm just asking the court to take notice in this judicial proceeding for considering her bond that there is an arrest warrant for her out of the state of
I
Arizona.
think it's been well established that she failed to appear at a hearing in Arizona. I don't think it's necessary to enter. In fact, I would assume, knowing all of my experience with the judicial system, that she failed to appear. There is an active warrant for her, and she has not answered that warrant.
Yes, sir.
So I don't see the need to introduce this particular document over objection, where she has testified that she failed to appear at a hearing in Arizona. So I sustain Mr. Yow's objection.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, earlier you were trying to explain that you didn't know where this meth pipe was, but specifically it was in your purse.
Which one? I had about 6 of them at that time.
The purse that you presented to the officer when he asked you.
Again, like I said, which one? I had 6 of them.
You
at
had
that
6
time.
pipes?
No, I had 6 purses, and they were all had stuff in them.
Fair enough. You always have an excuse, don't you?
No, I don't always have an excuse.
Now, do you know who Brian Hudnall is?
No, I do not.
You don't? Do you remember meeting him on May the 4th of 2018?
No.
Okay. Let me back up a little bit. How often did you drive or ride with Stephen Wiggins to different locations around Dixon County?
Not very often.
Okay. Well, take a guess.
I really couldn't tell you.
More than once?
Like I said, I really couldn't tell you because
Okay.
I don't know, because I was working too at the time.
So your testimony is you have no idea who Brian Hudnall is.
No, I don't.
Fair enough. Now, you also testified that you had some lengthy history of employment. Is that correct?
Yes.
How many jobs have you held since 2007?
See, I worked at Arby's for about a year and a half.
Okay.
When I first got to Kentucky, after that, my husband worked. My ex-husband did. I was a stay-at-home mom.
Okay, keep going.
So
How many jobs have you had?
we were divorced in 2011. I really didn't start working again until my youngest daughter started high school.
How many jobs have you had since 2007?
Maybe 10.
10. What's the longest single period of employment at one business that you've had since 2007?
About maybe 2 years.
2 years. And where was that?
That was at Arby's in Russellville, Kentucky.
Okay. So you've had 10 jobs since 2007. That's your best guess?
Yes.
So it's fair to say that you don't stay at any one place very long. Is that right?
Well, when you have a daughter like mine, you're not able to be at a job very long.
That's not my question. My question to you is, have you stayed at any one place of employment very long?
No.
Okay, thank you. What's the longest amount of time that you've ever lived in one city?
I lived in Russellville, Kentucky for 7 years, and before that I lived in California from the day I was born until I was 27.
But you lived in multiple cities in California.
In the county of San Diego, yes.
And my question to you was, what's the longest time you've ever lived in one city?
Russellville, Kentucky.
And how long was that?
About 7 years.
7 years. That's the longest you've ever lived in one city. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. In the questioning of your previous employment history, you were also asked if you sold drugs for your income,
No.
and you did not. But you have been present for several drug deals, correct?
Couple.
How many?
2 or 3.
2 or 3. Who else was present at those drug deals? I'm waiting.
Let's see. Stephen Wiggins and my ex-husband Daniel.
Okay. So 2 of the men in your life you have accompanied during drug deals. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you left Mr. Miles, or he left you, in what month of 2018?
April.
And how quickly after he left did you hook up with Stephen Wiggins?
A few weeks.
A few weeks. So pretty quickly you were in a relationship with Stephen Wiggins. Is that fair to say?
Relationship didn't really start until the 1st of May.
Okay. Were you in a relationship with Stephen Wiggins in May?
Yes.
What type of relationship?
Oh, I don't know how to describe the relationship.
Okay. You don't know how, or you just won't do it?
I was a puppet.
You were a puppet. Okay. Fair enough. Did you love Stephen Wiggins?
No.
Nope. But you love Mr. Miles?
Deeply.
Deeply. But yet you got with Mr. Wiggins while Mr. Miles was out looking for employment. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have a driver's license while you were driving Stephen Wiggins to various locations?
I wasn't allowed to drive my vehicle.
Okay. Did you see any weapons in your vehicle while you would ride or drive with Mr. Wiggins?
Objection. We're dangerously close to getting the substance of the allegations, and I don't think that's appropriate.
Sustained, this is a bond hearing, and I think we're fairly close to the facts of the underlying indictment. Sustained the objection.
And your testimony today is that you do not remember Brian Hudnall?
No, I don't.
Okay. I'll pass the witness.
Meter read.
Thank you, Your Honor. Does anybody else have access to your Facebook page?
Well, my husband does, but he doesn't get onto it. Let's see. From what I've been told in letters, several people have access to my Facebook.
Now, preceding this, before these allegations in April or May, did Mr. Wiggins have access to your Facebook page?
Yes.
Okay. And other people before that had access to your Facebook
Yes.
page? You indicated you didn't remember those pictures. Is it possible that someone else posted those?
I have no, I don't remember, but if those, I don't remember them being on my Facebook.
Okay. And you know about Facebook. You know how to post and things, right? You know that if anybody else had your password, they could have posted that. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you know of any way to establish in your computer or your phone, do you know of a way for you to determine who posted things on your Facebook page?
Only when I have discovered that my password has been changed multiple times.
Okay. And it has been changed multiple times?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
No further questions.
All right, thank you, ma'am. We step down and have a seat with the law. Mr. Young, you may call you up with
Briefly call Special Agent Nates from the TBI.